The heavy rains this spring have caused several problems in our strawberry beds. A number of gardeners have called and asked me about why their fruits are soft and watery, and this is simply a problem because we've had so much rain, and the strawberry fruits themselves take up a lot of that moisture. They become soft. Unfortunately, we can't stop the rain, but the fruits still taste good, they just don't store, so we need to eat them and process them immediately. Another problem that we see, even though the tops of our plants are very healthy, we find fruit rots caused by botrytis real common. And here's a little remnant of that, but what we commonly see are fruits that are covered with a fuzzy gray mold. And this is botrytis fruit rot. It's really common when we have cool, wet springs. And whenever we see rotten fruits in our orchard or in our vegetable garden, we want to make sure to remove those and destroy them. We don't want to put them in our compost, but get them out of our landscape entirely. And today we're going to be renovating our strawberry beds, and as we work, if we see any diseased material, we want to make sure that we remove that. Next year, there's going to be a bit of inoculum built up, so we might consider treating for the fruit rot. Well, today we're renovating our strawberry beds, and I have two different types of strawberries growing, and you could visually see the difference between this. At the far end, we have an everbearing variety called Ozark Beauty, and everbearing strawberries will produce fruit throughout the season. They tend to have heavier crops in the spring, around June actually, and then again in the fall. And you can see right now these plants are still flowering and getting ready to set more fruits. The other two cultivars that I have growing are June-bearing varieties. This is All-Star and we have Tri-Star. And these have finished producing their crop for the year and they're ready to be renovated. Renovating is basically a rejuvenation process. It prepares our plants for next year, and it's something that we do only with our June-bearing varieties. So you want to make sure that you know what type of strawberry you're growing. The basic process is quite simple. We're going to mow, we're going to narrow our rows and thin within the rows, and then we're going to fertilize. So let's start by cutting back our plants. Now, if our strawberry beds were in the ground, we could go ahead and use a lawnmower and set it up high. But since I'm in a raised bed, I'm just going to use a grass clippers. You could use shears and cut the plants off. And you want to cut them to a height where they're about 2 to 3 inches above the crown. The crown is the growing point of the plant. It's where the roots meet the stems, and this is where all of our new growth is going to emerge. So as we cut, we want to make sure that we cut above that, and that'll be about 1 to 2 inches above these crowns. Now we've cut back our strawberry plants by hand. You can also use, in a raised bed like this, you can also use a weed eater, but you want to be very careful to hold it level so that the string doesn't cut into the crowns of the plant. Once you've completed cutting back the plants, the next step is to narrow our rows. You could see the plants have completely filled the bed. We want to reestablish some rows, and I'm going to do that simply by cultivating. If you're in a large bed in the ground, you can use a tiller to do this as well. And our goal is to narrow these back and create 2 rows that are about 10 to 12 inches wide. And the plants that we leave are going to spread, and they're going to produce runners and refill the entire bed with new, young, vigorous growth. Okay, once we have our rows narrowed, we want to come into these rows and thin the number of plants within the row, and we want to leave some of the biggest, healthiest looking plants and remove others so that there's a spacing of about 3 to 4 inches between the plants. You want to use a nice narrow shovel or even a weeding tool so that if you're working right up next to a plant where there's 2 close together, that we don't damage one while we're removing the other ones. So you want to be as careful as you can and work slowly. As you're going along, if you see any diseased material in here or diseased plants, you want to remove those and destroy them. Don't put them in with your compost. And this might take a little while. Just work slowly, and sometimes the plants are connected at the base. You could try to separate those, or if there's another plant nearby, you can remove the entire clump. While we're thinning our plants, this is also a good time to remove any weeds that you find growing in the bed. Once you've finished thinning, we want to apply fertilizer to our beds. And the general recommendation is to apply 2 to 3 pounds of a 10-10-10 balanced fertilizer per 100 feet of row. And if you have had earlier soil tests that indicate you have high levels of phosphorus in your soil, it would be better to just use a nitrogen-only fertilizer. That way you don't add any unnecessary phosphorus to the beds. Now once you've finished fertilizing, we want to go ahead and mulch our beds, and this is going to help in the summertime to conserve soil moisture. It'll even cool the soil underneath the straw. And I'm just using a straw, and I'm making sure that the crowns poke out through that straw, and the runners will just crawl right over the top of our straw mulch and run down into the soil. Now remember, renovation is used only with our June-bearing crops. With our ever-bearing strawberries such as Ozark Beauty, we're simply going to come back and narrow our rows, but we're going to wait to do that until the fall after they've finished production.